Welcome everybody to the Haunted Vermont podcast. My name is Paul Doski, and joining us is I'm going to say a special guest for sure because you may know this man's work from Haunted Hikes of Vermont, which came out on October 4th, 2010, and a little bit after that. Unfortunately, something happened where Tim can come into this. It went out of print and it never saw the light again on shelves afterwards. But anyway, without further ado, this is Tim Simard.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm so glad I found you to talk to you about this
Yeah.
because I love this book. Like I think I told you when spring came around on Haunted Vermont, I would always share your book. And then even if it was even out of print, I'm still like, grab your handy book. It's that time of year again. So yeah,
Oh, that's great to hear. Thanks.
yeah, no problem. So Tim, let's get started a little bit. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, let's see. Well, I've been living in Vermont since I'd say mostly off and on since 1999, mostly on. But I am a native of New Hampshire, so I've got the two state rivalry within me, I guess, if you will. I grew up in New Hampshire, grew up hiking mostly in the White Mountains. That was kind of my passion. In Maine as well, because I was kind of close to the border in Maine. Vermont, I knew only a little bit about kind of growing up. Just because we didn't really have any family here, but I used to travel occasionally, just randomly throughout New England. We'd hit over here. But then I ended up going to college here, and that's just kind of how I moved here and never really left. Left briefly to go to grad school, but I came back. So I kind of fell in love with the state. I've been living in Waterbury since about 2009, 2008, maybe even earlier now if I think about it. And that's, let's see, my background to go to reach how I got to actually writing a book. My background is in journalism, I guess, to focus on that. I was doing mostly editing and writing for a number of publications around New England in the mid 2000s, and I also worked for newspapers as well. So I was doing all sorts of reporting, editing, any job that was coming my way, basically. So kind of writing a book, a hiking guide about Vermont, my love of outdoors, my love of writing material, kind of led to this book, actually. Since I've written the book, my career has changed from journalism to working, writing, and editing in the healthcare and higher ed fields and nonprofit fields as well. So I've bounced everywhere, all within this small state. But yeah, I did get to write this book back in like 09, 2010. If you don't mind, I can tell that story, how that actually came about. This is kind of a fun history there.
Yeah, go for it.
So I think it was in the mid 2000s. Haunted Hikes in New Hampshire by the author Mary Ann O'Connor came out, and that was like a surprise regional hit, I guess if you'd call it, for this small publishing company based in Exeter, New Hampshire. Uh, had several chapters about hikes around the White Mountains, good ghost stories and stuff like that. Had like definitely a devout following in the Granite State. And I think the publishing company, Publishing Works, thought, oh, hey, we can franchise this out, if you will. We could get regional local authors in, let's say, Maine to write a haunted hiking guides of Maine. We've got people in Massachusetts. We could do California. We can do all 50 states. Thinking grandiosely. And somehow, and this is just funny how this worked, is that the owner of Publishing Works at the time ran into my parents. They lived on the same street in New Hampshire, of all things, and she was kind of describing this, like, oh, we'd love to do other haunted hiking guides. And I think my dad's like, well, I know a guy. So on a whim, I hadn't talked to her in years, so I just sent her an email. I said, hey, this is what I've been doing. I'm in grad school for Master of Arts in Writing, a Master of Creative Arts in Writing. And I've been working as a journalist. I was like, I know the hiking trails in the state really well. I was like, I know the ghost stories. I can probably learn about that. But I said, I know where to hike and like what to do about, how to hike and how not to get lost in the woods. Maybe I'm the guy to pick up this second book in the series. She replied, great, let's meet. And it was that. That's how it happened. And that was usually you write like a book proposal and you have an agent and you go around and you're supposed to like, hit the streets of New York meeting with like, all these publishing companies who then like turn you down. But it was just like a simple, like 400 word email pitch. And She said, sure. And I was like, if you want, I can write up, I can give you an idea. Because I kind of knew what went into a book proposal. I said, I can go chapter by chapter and give you my ideas of what I think each chapter is going to be. She's like, no, that's fine. It's good. You just write. So I was like, okay. So, I mean, that's how that came about. It was, I to have an idea. People said, how did you choose the hikes? And I was like, well, I knew I wanted to hit throughout the state. I thought one of the minor criticisms of the New Hampshire book is that it was all centered in the north. It didn't quite cover the seacoast area. It didn't cover Keene, or it didn't even cover way up near like Pittsburgh. I wanted to get something that hit like Bennington County up all the way to Essex County and try to get the most of the state. I don't know if I was successful completely, but I tried to hit all the corners. So that was one thing I knew I had to do. And then I knew that there were I wanted to include some popular areas that people hiked, but I also wanted to include some places that a lot of people don't visit as much. And then I had to find the stories. And I know that Vermont has such history, and there's just history in every corner of the state. And invariably, there's always like a haunted house somewhere. So it didn't take long to find out, be like, oh, I'd love to cover the Island Pond area. Wow, there's some crazy stories already. That's easy to write about. And half the time they have to do with the actual hikes and trails that you're on. So that was the research part, to find out where the spooky stuff was in the woods, and to take people to them was a lot of fun. And then, of course, visiting all these places.
Definitely. And that's so cool. Like that backstory is like really fun. It's kind of like nowadays, all you have to do is just write it up yourself, and then you can just publish it yourself, even without a publisher. But
Right.
depending on who you talk to, they would prefer the publisher. You know, I mean, I guess it depends on the person. I guess
Right.
like how you want to look at that, but I published some stuff myself, and
Mm-hmm.
I remember some people reaching out to me, and they're like, "Oh, well, maybe we can help you promote this book, blah 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 blah, by changing your cover, doing this, doing that." And I'm
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, no." Like, like, to be fair, I wasn't really in it for the money. I was just mainly just in it for like, if somebody's interested, they can do it, but it's gonna
Yeah.
hurt my feelings.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't. This wasn't like a huge big bucks payday. Like this is going to set you for life thing. It was not that. It was like, here, you get like a small cut. You get more if you get on a second printing. But like, to me, the expense wasn't like I had to pour a ton of money into it. Mostly gasoline money, really, just driving around the state. But they fronted most of the bill. It wasn't self publishing. They had to pay for the printing run. They designed the cover. They did most of the hard work. So it was nice to go for that. I mean, if I had to do a self publishing route, it would be more of an expense for sure. And then um, if you self publish something and you've put your money into it, you really want to promote it so you can at least break even, I would suppose. Um, so with this, when it was the book that came out, they actually set me up on a couple book tour and interviews. They actually did do a little outreach. I did some as well, but I ended up going on a very minor book tour to like bookstores in like Chester and Ludlow. Where else was I? Burlington, of course, Montpelier. Um, yeah, pretty much all over the state. So I did do like a 3 week, like went to different bookstores, book libraries, and I had like a slide presentation that I did. But then that was pretty much it. It was like that like 3 week window I did, but it was fun.
No, I definitely agree, and like it's funny that you bring that up, that you went all over the place or whatever. Like, so I remember when I first saw your book on the bookshelf, and it wasn't even here in my hometown of Rutland. But anyway, so we were, me and a couple friends, like we were just bored one day, and we're just like, let's go do something. And so we all went to Burlington in his car or whatever, and basically just shopped, like just because we were just bored. Because and so we hit up like the downtown Church Street, and I'll give a shout out to the bookstore there that I believe is still open. It's called Grove Bookshop, or Crowd Books.
Yep. Yeah, it's still there. Yep.
Yep. And that's where I found your book. It
All
was
the
the
way.
last. It was the last copy, so I picked that one up, and I also picked up Joseph Citro's the original Vermont Ghost Guide.
Oh, nice. Yeah. Cool. I
And
know. A lot of
yeah,
people picked my book up. Friends around here at Bear Pond in Montpelier, Bear Pond Bookstore. Um, I had a friend find one in Stuyvesant, New York. So it was outside the state at one point.
It
Albany area.
probably is now.
Yeah,
So,
it could be.
well, with all these third parties, which we'll probably
Right.
get into that in a little bit, but
Sure.
uh, so I gotta ask you. So I think it with a little bit in your introduction in the book, if I kind of remember right. I know I kind of briefly read a little bit, so my brain is like trying to clog in so many things that I've had to get ready for, which is like other interviews that I've done this week. But
Mhm.
anyway, I think one of the things that you mentioned was you weren't really too sure on the paranormal going into this book. So did
Right.
that change while you were writing?
Yeah, I was very skeptical at the beginning. Not that I didn't enjoy, like, watching a Ghost Adventures on TV. I don't know if that was on back in 2009, but stuff like that was definitely like ghosts, people
Ghost Hunters. Yep.
investigations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Ghost hunters. Half the time, I thought they were just freaking themselves out if they heard like a little. If somebody bumped into a wall, they'd all cameras would fly and they'd all scream or whatever like that. And I was like, "Calm down, everyone. It's just dark." Uh, but I was pretty skeptical. However, my wife's family had very real paranormal experiences, which even me would go, "Oh, that's really strange." Like things where like my brother-in-law was asleep in the house and they shook he woke up to the bed being shaken. Nobody was in the room and it really freaked him out. And that morning he found out his mom called saying that like half their house burned down, probably the exact moment that his bed was shaking. So
Wow.
or part of the house burned, not all of it, but there was a fire and some of his stuff had burned and like in his truck had burned or something like that. I could be combining two different stories, but there was some damage. And I think, and that's pretty wild. And I guess there's my father-in-law says there's a ghost that lives at their house that will warn you if something's about to happen. And he's had visitations before, like there's been some family, things that happened to the family or like, events that like are outside their control that have occurred. So he finds it at first, he used to see things in the house and it would kind of make him nervous. Now he sees it more as a warning or a comfort that like someone's watching out for him type of thing. It's not malevolent. It's just more of like an informational ghost, I guess is what you would call it. I have not experienced that at their house, which is probably a good thing for me. But I know, probably half that family has. So, and the other thing is that from their house, if you're sitting in their front yard and you're looking east, you're looking at Glastonbury, the actual mountain.
Oh, geez.
So there is, and he's always, my father-in-law's always spoken about because he used to go hunting a lot up there and he used to hike up there and he'd be like, he never liked going up there. Something always bothered him about going to Glastonbury. Just did not feel comfortable up there. And I was like, because it's really remote, there's no roads around. He's like, no, that doesn't bother me. It's just there's just a feeling that he's not comfortable with. And his father is very similar. It's pretty strange, and he can't really explain it. But the one thing I remember, one of my first experiences with Glastonbury was when I was staying at their house, and that southern part of the state gets rammed with thunderstorms sometimes, like really big storms. Rutland South, I don't know what it is, but you guys just get it. We don't up here. I was sitting out looking out their front window, and it was like it reminded me of like was it War of the Worlds where the lightning keeps hitting like a spot
Oh,
like
okay.
once, yeah, and it was like that over on that ridge on Glastonbury. We just kept watching lightning bolt after lightning bolt. Seemingly they weren't probably, but it looked like they were hitting the same spot, and it went off for hours. I'd never been in a storm like that, and I was like, what is drawing all that electricity to this spot? And that was when I first became aware of all that. So yeah, I was originally skeptical, but I kept an open mind. How I feel about it now, I guess I'm still a little skeptical, but I'm more open to hearing people's stories and to reading, to experiencing things that people have, because I've talked with people that are dead serious about having a paranormal encounter, and they believe it and I believe it. They've seen something they can't explain, so who knows? I'm open to whatever's out there.
Oh yeah, and I have plenty of experiences from my friend's house to like kind of like some weird incident that I've had when I was even little, and it was just like, what the hell is going on? Like, I don't know how to explain this. And you know, more you dive into the paranormal, it becomes like a rabbit that you're chasing down a never ending hole.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's one thing that I did when researching was that most of these experiences, people I know have had paranormal experiences, were in like a confined space or in a house. With a haunted hike, I mean, are you out in the woods? You're more likely. Are you going to be seeing ghosts in the woods, or I think people more likely are to let their imaginations run and think they're having a paranormal experience when it could just be a bear crashing through the trees. It's a little hard. It's a little harder to. You can debunk it, I guess, would be a little easier. Is one thing to say. It's like, well, you're out in the woods and anything could be moving around. So it's
Yeah. Unless you run into like a Bigfoot and they're
right,
throwing rocks and
right.
logs at you, and I mean,
Hmm.
you hear those stories, and then you hear the bluff charges, and oh man, like this is another rabbit hole that you
Right.
can go down into just because when you mention Bigfoot, it's like you're wrong, you don't know what you're talking about, and yeah, it could be
Yeah.
depending on who you're talking to.
Right.
So
Yeah, and there's some people around here who are legitimate Bigfoot hunters, which is very fascinating to me because I thought they were all up in Oregon or whatever, but they're in Vermont, New Hampshire too. Um, yeah. So there was one. So I can tell you about one outdoors paranormal story that I think I experienced. It was up on Glastonbury of all places too. Was so I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if you've hiked up there up to the fire tower before,
not all the
but
way, no.
yeah, it's not easy to get to. I mean, you either know like some of the back woods roads that aren't really mapped that well, or you just take the long trail, which is like 10 miles from Route 9 north, one way. So this is it's not like a 10-mile loop. This is going to be a 20-mile a day. But so to back up my story a little bit, I was like, I'm going to do this Glastonbury hike in one day. Usually people backpack in two, and I was like, well, I'm limited time. It's a Saturday. I'll just get up early. So I left Route 9, hiked up that steep ridge, and then headed across, headed north on the long trail, Appalachian Trail, for 10 miles. Actually, got up to Glastonbury, that morning. Pretty good time. Wasn't tired, feeling pretty good. Got past the shelter, went up on top of the fire tower, lookout tower. Beautiful, gorgeous day. It was October. The leaves were a little past peak, but it was really nice. And then I headed down, and there's a point where I could have headed back down the long trail south, or I could have taken a right and taken this thing called the West Ridge Trail, which dips down into this little like ravine between Glastonbury and its West Ridge, and then climbs back up, and then you head down a different route. And you basically do a big loop, and it's like 24 miles or something, which is a lot. Sounded like a great idea at the time that I could do all this. But so when I went down the summit cone of Glastonbury and I came into this little like valley between the West Ridge, I heard what I thought at the time, which didn't seem strange to me, was like a locomotive train, like the whistle blowing. I was like, okay, well, it's probably down the valley. There's a tourist train down there. It sounded a little closer than that, but I didn't think anything of it, and I heard it a couple times. So I get back to my in-laws' house. I'm extremely spent. That long hike off the West Ridge is pretty monotonous and similar, and I think about 2/3 of the way into this hike, I was ready to be done, but I still had much to go. It was clouding up. It was getting cold. It was snowing a little bit. I did get back to the car. Luckily, I didn't like disappear in the Bennington Triangle. Don't think it didn't cross my mind that somebody was going to have to come find me at one point, because I did sit down and did not want to get up. But once I got back to the car, I felt very relieved. Got back to their house, and I mentioned it like offhand as I was like glued to the couch. I couldn't move. I was like, "Yeah, I heard a train. That's the only thing I really thought was notable." I said, I didn't realize it was I thought the train was on the western edge of the valley, not the eastern side. I'm surprised I heard it that well." And he's like, "There's no train running this time of year, but not the one you heard." And I was like, "Really?" I was like, "Yeah, there shouldn't be a train up there." I've heard. He's like, "I've heard trains up there before, like 20 years ago, but there's definitely not a train." He's like, "I don't know what I heard either." And I was like, "Well, that's weird." I don't know where the sound was traveling, or if it wasn't traveling at all, and I was hearing something that from way back when. I have no idea. I know they used to log a lot up there. There was a huge logging area, and they probably were dragging trees out via railway and horse and buggy and stuff like that. But I don't know. I think that's kind of strange. I don't know if it's just the way the sound was traveling, or I heard something from 100 years before. It was really strange. I think I would have been freaked out more if I thought it was uncommon. But just hearing a train in the distance in the woods didn't strike me as odd at the time. But now I look back and go, "Oh, okay, that is weird."
Yeah, and that's quite funny that you bring up a train because I actually have a story too.
Oh, really?
That is, yeah. So,
Okay.
um, so let's first dive into yours for a minute. So we
Okay.
got the idea of if you do hear the train and it is the woods, and you kind of know that sound does carry, and since it is the
Hmm.
woods, it's gonna carry quite
Right.
good. And even with like a sound over water, the water will help carry the sound and all that stuff. So, so I guess my story is, um, we didn't go to Glastonbury Mountain for this. We actually went to the uh place where the disastrous train wreck happened in
Hmm.
Hartford. I forget
Yep.
what year it is right now, but yeah. So anyway, we wanted to check that out because we heard that story, and supposedly you can hear like like the old people that crashed with the train, like screaming and like almost like they're on fire still or whatever. So we went to go investigate that. So we didn't think anything of it. Well, anyway, nothing paranormal would really happen, and it felt like we were just like, okay, whatever. We just had this one person kind of like shine a flashlight all the way up to like the train tracks because they were noticing like our lights or whatever. But other than that, we were just like, well, I don't think anything's going on, and I think this person's gonna probably call the cops on us, but we should probably head back. So while we're still trying to figure out and discuss like if we could figure out maybe another place to go or whatever, we sat on the tracks, and the weirdest thing happened. It was almost like the tracks shook, almost like a train was coming, and I can never still explain that. So I don't know what that was, but it was almost like when a train has to either stop or change tracks or whatever. That's
Yep.
basically the sound that we got,
Oh,
and
weird.
there was absolutely no sign or sound of a train coming to us. So I
Huh.
cannot debunk what happened that night.
Right. Yeah. I mean, in my case, I mean, the leaves were kind of still on the trees. They weren't completely off yet. It was that in between stick season. So, I mean, in the winter, yeah, sounds travel a lot more, but I wasn't, it was still like mid October. So I shouldn't have been able to hear something as clear as I did the location I was at. It was, on a map I could show you, but it's a very kind of secluded hollow, basically. That would have been hard for me to hear anything that was coming up from the Manchester Arlington area. But there I was. I heard something.
Yeah, and that was like us. Like we did this around end of July, beginning of August. So yeah,
Yeah.
I still don't. I like when I say that even right now. It's like I really don't understand what happened. Like I don't
Yeah.
understand. Like what would make the tracks shake? I mean, or in this case, like how far away does the tracks vibrate? You know, like I don't know these answers, so I'm not an expert.
Yeah. I don't. I know. No. I'm not. I'm no train expert either. It's funny. I'd like to go back there sometime. It would require. I would do it in 2 days. I wouldn't do it all one day again. I would camp out at the shelter there. It is actually funny because I ran into someone. I remember this on. They were hiking the long trail in reverse. So they were coming north to south, and I just offhand mentioned why I was up there. And he's like, "I was like, have you experienced anything up here? Because you camped out at the shelter just north of the fire tower." He's like, "No, not really." And then he stopped, and he's like, "I saw a bunch of weird lights overhead last night that I couldn't explain." He's like, "I heard no sounds." And he's like, "I kept thinking it was UFOs," but he's like, "I couldn't be that." And I was like, "Oh, great. Who
Oh,
knows what he
great.
saw?" Yeah, right.
Well, it's Glastonbury. We got the famous Bennington Triangle that you just pointed out and stuff with all those weird, mysterious disappearances, which one of them is still even open to this day. And
Right.
everything else, as I remember with the newspaper article that I looked up, it sounds like they just kind of considered everybody to just be, dead or long gone or something.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's a place if you needed to disappear you could because it's just nothing up there. It's so remote. It's one of the you always think of like the Northeast Kingdom as a remote area, but I would think the southern part, that whole section of the Long Trail is as remote as any part of the state really. Um,
Yeah,
it really is. Which isn't that common I think in Vermont. Everybody's like, "Oh, mountainous." terrain. You can get lost in the woods. You definitely can, but you're also never that far from like a farmhouse or a forest road or something. Glastonbury is an exception for sure.
One thing I will mention that I love about the Glastonbury Mountain trail is like I love the how do I want to word it? Is the like rock formation almost like you're going up stairs of rocks.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Oh, you're talking coming up Route 9 there, the
Yeah,
trail, or yeah,
yeah.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, it'd be easier doing that than going up the like an eroded like trail, grabbing onto rocks and roots and stuff like that. it's
Oh,
a
I
cool
believe
spot.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you keep following that path around like this weird tree that is even in the ground kind of sticking out, I
Mm-hmm.
forget. It was just so weird, but everything else was just so cool. And I
Yep.
liked how when you get up far enough, you I don't know if I want to say boulder, but you get to a part where like the two rocks or whatever are like split,
Yep.
and you can just kind of just keep walking because that's where the
Right.
trail is. It makes you like walk in between them. That's so
Mm-hmm.
cool too. And
Yeah, I was gonna say a lot of
yeah,
a lot of those formations, a lot of the stuff you see along the trail have taken on legends of their own, where people are saying there's some kind of like cool history between like those rocks or the trees or something like that, or like maybe that's where people disappeared. Um, and
I
then of
think one
course,
of the I think one of the stories I think was something about some sort of god or goddess that was like flinging those rocks, and that's why
mm-hmm.
where they landed or something like that.
No, my favorite's the Bennington Monster that everybody thinks there's a Bigfoot up there, but the rumor is that it's really just some crazy guy that used to come down from the mountain of Bennington and like stare in people's windows, which is like way more disturbing than any Bigfoot. It's just some like some hill man like coming down trying to like steal stuff out of garages or whatever.
Well,
But yeah, then those
yeah.
legends take on a life of their own too.
Oh, geez. Well, that's always the fun part is like what is a legend and what isn't. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, also Glastonbury is part of the abandoned town there that vanished basically, or at least the people got up and left. And then I believe Glastonbury was part of some sort of Indian tribe as well.
Right. I think there've been a lot of inhabitants there. There were a couple different mill communities that are part of the current Glastonbury like border. I think that I think were really popular back in the logging days. But once that industry dried up, everybody left. But because logging towns have a kind of like a Wild West quality to them when you read up on them. There were all sorts of things happening. Like saloon gunfights and stuff like that. It does. It sounds like something out west, but it's they got that history as well. And yeah, I think just like most of New England, there were Native American tribes all over the place, and they probably lived around the mountain. Although I feel like they stayed away from summit tops because that's where they believe their gods lived. So they stayed away from the actual tops of the mountains, but they definitely explored around the base and on the slopes and stuff.
Oh, definitely, definitely. I feel like no matter where you're looking at that map of
Mm-hmm.
Glastonbury and stuff, there's always something weird going on because of like even if you use earth.google.com and you type in Glastonbury Mountain, like you just notice like even the thickness of the colors because I think the darker the colors, it means like how thicker the woods or forest,
Yep.
however you want to look at it, is. And that's a lot of dark in there too.
Yeah. It is the very top of the mountain, and I remember this specifically. You walk from the shelter, and I should know the name of the shelter off the top of my head, but you walk north from the shelter, and you just go up a little bit. You don't even climb too much, but it gets the forest in there is the mountain is completely the summit is completely covered in trees, but it's like dark stunted fir trees, and it's impenetrable. Like right before you get to the fire tower, you look in there, it's like it turns into nighttime. It gets the cover of the canopy, and it's not tall. It's maybe like 9 feet tall. The canopy of the tree. It's very short for people, so it's just above your head, and it's like dark in there. So I can see where people their minds start to wander, especially if you're up there at a certain time of day. But once you get up on the fire tower, it's really a whole different world.
Hmm. Well, hopefully one day I'll be able to check out the fire tower. I
Yeah.
know we tried going around the back way,
Mm-hmm.
and then that's when we noticed that our car was not going to work. So
Oh yeah. Yeah, there are some like I've taken a four wheeler, not a four wheeler, like a Jeep. I wasn't driving, but we went into it's like Glastonbury Road near Fayetteville, and we could have kept going, but I wasn't sure the quality of the road. I think growing up, my wife went up in a old Jeep, and they were able to like get to the top that way. But they've had Hurricane Irene washed out so many trails and roads in the national forest that
Yeah,
I don't even know. I wouldn't send anybody there, even like 12 years after. Yet I would just be like, go walk in.
yeah, exactly, and that's like, and the fact too with that one as well with that storm is that like how many graveyards got washed out as well,
Yeah.
and
Mm-hmm.
it still makes me wonder if like all those people that did have family members go get washed away. I guess as much as I hate to say it like that, but I wonder if they ever found them.
Yeah.
I
I
know.
mean, I'm. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say I just know that like there was quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean, there was the one. There was the national news story where you saw pictures of like the Rochester graveyard that had been washed out, and there were stones and caskets that had come out, which is really grim to look at. You're right. There are graveyards up in the woods that I don't even know about, but who knows what happened to them? I mean, I can think of the one in Little River State Park in Waterbury that was untouched because it wasn't super close to the river. But who knows if others were?
Hmm. Yeah, and um, speaking of one last thing that I can think of that we can talk on for a Glastonbury area is what is it? I don't even know. Like people call it Woodford,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
and God, it's not even that far away from the parking lot of Glastonbury Mountain. So I'm gonna guess. This is just me guessing because I don't know for a fact, but it's probably a quarter mile from the parking lot of Glastonbury. But anyway, if you see a sign about the National Forest or something to that effect, if you pull off to where that storm knocked out a lot of stuff, even the road there,
Yep.
there's actually a trail that you can walk up, and there's like a hidden cemetery in there.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Huh. No,
and
I didn't know that.
yeah, an old friend of mine, because I haven't heard from him in years, so I hope he's okay. But me and him used to go on trips all the time to explore like abandoned areas or ghost stories type stuff, or we would check out tips that people sent to us. And one of the tips was from one of his friends who knew about this hidden cemetery.
Hmm.
So we checked it out, and because me being a paranormal investigator at the time, I brought an EMF reader, my voice recorder. I brought a little camcorder just so I could film the EMF, and that way I could capture anything if it like shows some sort of weird electromagnetic field going off. And so there was basically two guys and myself. So basically three men total that walked up this trail to find the hidden cemetery. And as we got there and was going around and stuff, we got a couple weird EMF spikes, but I didn't really take anything uh, too serious. But when I went back to re-listen to my voice recordings, I noticed that there was a female spirit that was answering some of our questions, and I'm like, now this is weird.
That is weird.
And I'll never forget one of the answers I got, and I can't. The only thing is, I can't remember exactly when it came in to what question, but basically the answer was, well, it were two answers to the question, I believe. It was don't tell anybody, and then something to the effect of this is all we're gonna get.
Oh, weird.
And so I think the whole like don't tell anybody was, I'm wondering if I got the name of the spirit right or something to that effect. And I don't tell anybody, meaning like I'm here, like don't tell anybody, and then that's all you're gonna get basically is like yeah, that's it. That was it.
That was like the friendly way of saying you gotta go. You know, it's like they were being nice.
Well, one thing that me and the two friends of mine were like trying to figure out is why there was a campfire right by the cemetery.
Oh wow. So I mean,
So
was it had been on fire, or was it like was there like smoke coming out of it, or?
no, but you
Mhm.
can definitely you could tell though it was like freshly used though,
Mhm.
like just because of the way the burnt logs were or whatever that was in there, like it was freshly used. So for how long though, I don't know, but
Hmm.
it was.
Interesting.
It is weird though that you can go up to this place. There's a campfire right next to a graveyard, and
Weird.
you, yeah, I don't know. I guess you're inviting ghosts to a campfire. I guess and
Yeah.
actually tell ghost stories. You know,
I was gonna say maybe someone wants to go up there and commune with a long lost relative or something like that and stay overnight. You know, who knows?
definitely, definitely. I mean, I thought that was always fascinating, and I'll just never forget those EVPs though. So I just thought it
Yeah.
was just so weird, and everybody was like, "Oh, it's one of you guys talking." I'm like, does any of us sound like a female to you?
Yeah.
But yeah. So Glastonbury is always the fun place to talk about. Another fun place is actually one of the places that you start off the book with is Southern Vermont College, and as we're talking about this, Tim has informed me because I didn't know this, but apparently Southern Vermont College is no longer Southern Vermont College, and it's going to be turning into a daycare now. And well, that just sounds fun already. So Tim, take it
Yeah.
away.
Yeah, I mean, not that I have insider knowledge or no, not necessarily breaking news, but I know that Southern Vermont College, there was a whole crash with hire at a lot of small universities. Just couldn't open. This was pre-COVID, pre-pandemic. It was just it was a bubble in the education industry, and I think Southern Vermont College kind of fell into that. And I think there might have been somebody who was embezzling. I'm just going from memory there. There could have been some other nefarious things happening. But anyway, Southern Vermont College is no longer, and I think it was being rented out to various groups for like retreats and stuff like that. Now, yes, there is I think it's like a healthcare organization is going to be opening like a large daycare facility, which I can only imagine the kids are going to love to meet all the residents of the Everett Mansion there. That'll go over really well if they're there a little late after pickup. Um, but that building has been used for so many things, even before Southern Vermont College. And when it was built by Edward Everett, I think it was like he just had a ton of money, so he came back to Bennington and was like, "Look what I can build." Um, yeah, that building's got a history that goes beyond higher education too. So, but once Southern Vermont College was there, I thought they had a cool thing in the library there. I don't know if you'd been in there when it was a college, but there was a small like library in there. It was pretty cool, and the head librarian kept what she called a ghost log. And so, if any students had any like interesting experiences, they were asked to contribute to the ghost log and write up whatever they saw. And I read through them. There was several in there, several stories. Some of them were like a paragraph, like I was walking down the hall and I saw what I thought was a face in the window. That's what they would have written. Other guys were like writing this like it was like a creative writing exercise for them. They wrote like, I woke up in the morning. It was just like large flowery language. You could tell they were English majors, and they would write up all sorts of like really weird experiences they had staying like late at night in the theater working on a project, or they saw something in the dorms. I don't know if they had anything else going on with them, but they always saw. It was very very interesting that they saw there was a lot of like female figures that would appear, like lighted figures, or like they'd hear voices and stuff like that. And in that old style New England mansion, which was it's also you've been there, you can see that it's also over the top. Like Edward Everett, like built a house and then he just kept going a little too much. Like he's got that weird garden in the back where it's got like a terrace garden with the waterfalls and like these Greek statues. It's might have been gaudy back in the day. It's probably what they would have called it. But yeah, there's so many interesting haunted stories there. I'll be interested to see what the daycare kids find in a couple of years when it becomes an official facility, if that's what it's going to turn into.
Oh yeah, exactly. And so I pulled up a small two things that I've collected over the years of running Haunted Vermont. So I'm curious to see if any of these is also what you've heard. So I'll start with this easy one real quick. So apparently, during the Southern Vermont college time, the old carriage house, which was one of the computer labs, I guess the doors used to lock and the computers used to shut off by themselves. It is also said that you can see a mirror in a period dress roaming around the main building.
Oh, weird. Yeah, I think I did read that. I think it was probably in the ghost log or something. Someone hadn't saved their work and the computer shut down. Like they lost everything they were working on, and then suddenly they saw something. I think that's what I'm remembering.
Yeah, and speaking of Everett, I just saw it. Where is it? Right here. Excuse me. According to years of the students and staff during the night security, um, apparently the second wife of Everett or something like that, Everett himself, and a person would be seen in a black robe, I guess.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know that one. I believe it though.
Um, they say that smoke sometimes would fill the hallways. Lights would turn on in rooms that are supposed to be locked, with the doors and windows unlocked after being locked, and security have to basically go around and relock them. Otherwise, there's the infamous footsteps all the way around the college when nobody else is in the building. And then apparently the main haunts take place um, on the third floor. And
Hmm.
then something about supernatural images that come from like the statues. And then the last one I
Oh,
have
weird.
is the Abbey room is burning with energy. And it's apparently a classroom with sleeping quarters for house staff maid hung herself, apparently.
Whoa. Yeah, I mean, it's there's so much. The building is so big that I can see where there's probably each room has its own story. Yeah, that could manifest this stuff for sure. And mostly, I think most of the hauntings were confined to that mansion. I don't know if anybody saw some stuff down in the dorm rooms, the buildings further down in campus, but I think everything was pretty much just in the Everett mansion. So if you had to work late in the computer labs, you might want to consider getting your stuff done early, so you don't have to deal with all that stuff. But now it's going to be a whole different crowd that will be there. So I'd be really interested to see like what that's going to bring. If I don't think we'd hear anything for a couple of years, but we'd be interested to see what kind of stories continue because I bet there will be some.
What do we know? Was Everett like into like were did he have kids or children, or was he ever thinking about them? Do we even know any of this?
Oh, I bet that answer's out there somewhere. I'm not a Bennington, Vermont like historian, but he must have had kids. They must have some kind of. I think maybe one of his kids was the original people that sold off the mansion. I think it was like a nunnery or something that for a while. So
Hmm.
um,
I didn't
yeah,
hear about
I
that.
think the family did. They were the ones that sold it. It wasn't like it just fell into some trust or whatever. Probably because that thing is, I mean, it's a huge mansion. It's the upkeep for one family would be insane to keep up in a cold climate. The heating bill alone would put you out of business. But yeah, I mean that it's a reflection of the man who wanted to show he was larger than life. I think it's an interesting character study. Just looking at the building, just walking on campus, just kind of tells you everything you need to know about the guy. Really, that's how I see it. It's like, oh, this would have been an interesting person to meet. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and in terms of hiking, you can park at the same spot. Well, I think you can. I don't know. I mean, now with the new ownership, I want to put a little caveat on that. I don't know what their intentions will be with the property, but you could hike up to the top of Mount Anthony from like right where you park um, to go to the main building there, the Everett Mansion. There's a hiking trail, it's a steep one that goes right up to the top where the radio towers are, or you can walk the grounds about a mile west to the Everett Cave, which
Oh yep.
is I don't know if you've been to the cave, and I don't know if there's like a huge haunting history there, but caves by themselves are kind of creepy to begin with. So,
And that's actually a good point that you just brought up too. With a couple things is so I recently just got asked if people are allowed to go there with a private group to do like ghost hunting, and I was like, I don't know. So,
right, you probably have to ask the ownership, whatever that the healthcare group is now. I might wait a while. I don't know if I do it right away because they might be like, no, might scare them a little.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I feel like the grounds. I mean, the grounds for the most part, even when it was open on the college and under other ownership, they were always very good about letting people kind of use that open land because I think a lot of trails and paths kind of go in from like town land, town forest, state land. I think there's like a big connection of like routes there. I know people used to mountain bike in places there. I haven't done that there. I've just walked around. But to get to the cave, it was just an easy walk, and a pretty walk, because it's like this walkway of these giant trees that like overhang the path, and then the cave itself. I mean, I'm no spelunker, but I think you can go. There's rumors have it that it goes all the way underneath Mount Anthony if you explore far enough. It's also one of the few like documented caves. There's one in Weybridge too, but one of the few Vermont documented caves that people know how to get to. There are actually a lot of caves on that side of the state, but they're not well advertised. People know where they are if you know people that are into caving. There's like a Vermont caving guide, and it doesn't tell you directions to get to a lot of these places because they don't want a lot of people going there because they'll think they're going to get stuck, which is probably exactly what will happen. But yeah, there are, especially in the Taconic range of the mountains, there are places to explore. Uh, yeah, I haven't really done a lot of that because I don't need to go into a cave so much, like especially if I can find space. That's not like it's not like Howe Caverns, which is like all lit up and you can take an elevator down. These you have to like really get into yourself, but there are out there if anybody's into caving. There are ways to find quite a few caves in the state.
Oh man, that sounds like fun already.
Yeah,
Now speaking of like that, of how you're thrown in like a cave and this and that. So one cool thing about your book that you used to have, at least do, is the difficulty which you would use like or I don't know if this is just with you or how or whoever did it, but anyway, it was like ghosts. You were using like ghosts. So like for those listening, an idea for this. So let's back up to Glastonbury for a minute. So what
sure.
would be the difficulty of the Glastonbury?
I think I put that at four ghosts. Or the publisher did. I think I had a different symbol. I think like I had like mountain peaks or something like that. And they put ghosts, which is definitely a better choice. That's a four. That's probably the hardest, and it's not necessarily like you're like steep, like it's unrelentingly steep. It's long. It's just a long hike. So I think that's why I made it. And
Yeah,
I
10
think
miles is gonna get to you.
I judged these difficulty ratings on how I felt at the end. I think it was mostly like my benchmark was me. So somebody might, who knows, super fit guy could be like 22.3 mile, like hike through the woods. I can do that in 6 hours, and it's like a breeze, and they just run the trail. So, but like this is for like the average hiker. I even put in the book Glastonbury 2-day hike. I really urged people to do that in 2 days.
Well, I don't blame you. I don't blame you at all.
Yeah,
I mean, I've only been there and only did probably part of the trail, and I'm still like,
yeah. Well, the hardest part of the trail is in the very beginning. So once you get over
yeah,
that, then it's like it's not. I wouldn't call it a breeze, but it's the actual aerobic climb is nowhere. It doesn't do that again. Which is,
right.
imagine if it did that for 20 miles. That'd be climbing Everest or something.
Yeah, and so what would the rating for Southern Vermont? I think that would like
Oh, the Everett Cave is probably one ghost. That's an easy one.
yeah, yeah, that
Yeah,
would like really easy.
Mount Anthony probably got three because it really is. That's a constant climb.
Oh, I
That's a
think you gave it.
constant.
Oh
Yeah,
wait, yeah, Mount Anthony with 3. Yep, yep,
yep.
yep. And then
That
I
one.
think
Yeah,
that one would what? I'm sorry.
yeah. That was three because it's just steep from beginning to end. It's not super long, but it's like it's just not that easy.
And yes, Everett Cave was one ghost. Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yep.
That's so. Yeah, I'd never really gotten a chance to go to these because always something in my life got caught up.
Yep.
Like I wanted to go to the Paracon, and every time it would fall on a weekend, something would come up, and I would not be able to go.
Yep. Yeah, life gets in the way for sure.
Yeah, but you had some interesting stories, like inside and outside of Southern Vermont College. I don't know if you wanted to share them, or at least give us like a little bit of what you heard or seen, or
Oh,
yeah,
at the college itself.
yeah.
Yeah. So I actually went there a couple times to kind of get a feel for the place. Plus, I did the 2 hikes. I didn't actually do Mount Anthony and the cave in one day, although I probably could have. But yeah, I mean, there were. It's quiet. I'm trying to experience. I mean, trying to get an idea about like what I experienced like an old building like that. It's an old college building, so you're already hearing sounds to begin with. There's people there, creaking sounds. It's old. They haven't really updated it a lot. So yeah, I mean, I think I don't know if it was me playing tricks on my brain, but I thought I saw like something in the window at one point when I turned around and looked back, like third floor up. Thought I saw a face. Could have been an actual face of someone. Looking back at me, it might have not been ghost, but an actual student. But when you see from a distance, and you're already kind of like weirded out by it, it was quite the experience.
Well, like I
And
just said real quick, it's like
mhm.
what I just read to you. That third floor is where the main
Yeah,
hauntings were. So I don't
yeah,
know what to tell you.
and I don't think the third floor is too big. I mean, the first floor is big because it connects to other parts of that building. The third floor gets progressively smaller, so that's a more confined space. So maybe I'm guessing that's where the sleeping quarters were, and that's where a lot of people spent their time. So
Yes.
I'm sure there were things that happened. I used to actually work at an old university or old college building in Montpelier, Vermont College of Fine Arts. I don't know if you've been to Montpelier, but there's a big. This is a great place for ghost investigation one day if you ever want it. But there's up on College Hill. There's a 4-story old New England college for it's an arts college, but it's an old building that's been there since well over 100 years. And there was a ghost there. They used to say was called Anna, and she used to mess with people on the fourth floor, shut doors, slam things, move books around. Just mostly just kind of a nuisance ghost, I guess is what they called her. Nothing like nefarious, but they decided this was back probably 2008. They decided to create a cafe there that would be open year round. Usually they only had it open when students were there, but they're like, no, we're going to make this a cafe that's open year round, and they called it Cafe Anna, named after the ghost. And after they named the cafe after the ghost, the hauntings stopped. So I'm guessing by giving her her own year-round restaurant, it satisfied her ability to stop messing with people on campus, I guess. Oh, and apparently there was a malevolent ghost that lived in the basement, and when dogs went down there, they freaked out and would like not get out, go down the stairs and not get out of the elevator. So we decided to test that once with a friend's dog, and we brought the dog down, and he was happy as a clam. So I don't know, either he wasn't intuitive with ghosts, or it just wasn't haunting that day. But like I know people that would not go down to the basement. So
Hmm.
I don't know if you ever. I feel like they might have been somebody might have investigated that building like a long time ago, maybe 20 years ago. I don't remember what the outcome was, but if you're looking for your next like investigation project, that might be a cool spot to check out.
For sure, yeah. And you just saying that kind of reminded me of another interesting like paranormal story that happened with me back in the day with a friend of mine. So his old place used to used to be so active it was like ridiculous, and it only would happen every now and then, so not all the time. But the crazy thing about this is that after they left, that's when the activity stopped.
Hmm. So it was tied to him and not the building, maybe.
Well, that's what we were wondering if it was some sort of like poltergeist activity, which a poltergeist activity can in fact be from a living being. So
Yep.
we have no idea.
Yeah, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. The other thing that we were trying to maybe say is when they left, they ended up turning the one family building house into like a three family complex, I guess.
Hmm.
But I don't know how they managed to do that, but apparently that's what happened to it. So I don't know if it's causing it causing the house to have more families than just one family. Basically told the ghost like, "Oh, this is too much." I don't know.
Yeah. Or maybe they partitioned it and it's only haunting one part of the house or something like
Well,
that.
it was always weird. Like I'll share some stories. I know I have a episode based on that with my friend actually. I think it's like the episode called paranormal experience with Justin Heath or something like that. But anyway, yeah, it was all about that. And one of the weirdest part though about that place was I went there to celebrate his birthday party. It was me and another friend of his, and we went to sleep. And so he was always by the window because he needed like cold air on him or a fan on him. He was like one of those type of people. Um, our our friend who was like skinnier was basically in the middle, and I was like more towards the end of the bed, towards the floor. So like if I rolled over to my right, I would just fall to the floor. The next morning, I was at the window. My buddy who was at the window is tucked underneath the bed, and my friend that was in the middle is where I should have been.
Hmm. And nobody remembers moving around?
And nobody remembered moving around.
Wow,
And
that's
for somebody like me, if I were to move to my left, I would have squashed that kid.
mhm.
Which is be honest. And so obviously I would have felt him, so I would have stopped anyway. But yeah, I mean I can't explain it. And even if my friend at the end, at the window, wanted to get up and roam around and had to go use the bathroom, he would have had to have stepped over us. And yeah, no,
Oh, that's
there's
weird.
just no way.
Yeah, that's
Um,
strange.
yeah, and like his sister witnessed like a candle floating down the hall by itself, and this and that. Like it's crazy.
Cool.
Yeah. But yeah, I just thought that was just funny because after all that happened, that's when the paranormal stuff happened or stopped.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
They moved you and moved on.
So that's why we're thinking it was somebody like poltergeist wise for one of the family members. I don't know if it was him or his sister or what,
Hmm.
but we
Interesting.
don't know. Yeah. But so you wanted to talk about Lake Champlain, not just because of like Champ and UFOs, I think, or the
Right.
underwater submersive objects, if I said that right. But anyway,
Yep.
like before we get into it there, Kim, I'm curious. Have you heard about the whole like Lake Champlain might be one of the base uh or the centers of the UFO activity because there might be like a UFO base underneath? Because I guess
No, I've heard this. I like this though. There's a space base underneath the lake. Is that what I'm?
see that's what I'm hearing because people have claimed to have witnessed UFOs going in and out of Lake Champlain.
Oh, I've not heard of this. I've heard of like people seeing things over the lake for sure, but that's interesting.
Okay, so you're the
Whereabouts on the
second
lake?
person.
Whereabouts on the lake though? Because the lake's big, so it could be. Is it up in the islands or is it like southern part of the lake?
Oh, it's been a couple of years. I want to say it's more probably by the island, somewhere around the island.
Yeah, interesting. Because that's because in the book there's the chapter Colchester Bay chapter, Kneecap Bay, where they in the
Oh, yep.
'60s those campers saw the apparently they got abducted too and they saw a spaceship, which is like they were looking at the spaceship they'd be looking at over at the islands or South Hero at least. Um, yeah, interesting. I've not heard this.
You're the second person now, and now I gotta figure out who has told me that so I can like get some clarification again. But I think I know who it was. I just want to confirm with him if I
Hmm.
can even get a hold of him. But yeah, I thought that was always interesting because people now are starting to think that for some reason UFO now tie into the lake monster Champ, which ties into this and that. So it's just like, oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Champ is controlling an alien base underneath North Hero. Oh well, that's a theory I've not heard. The UFO story I referenced, there had been a lot of reports like that time of year around the late '60s in New York and Vermont of like some UFO activity. Um, there was a lot of like UFO stories that happened in like the '50s and '60s, and I'm always like people were seeing things. Some of it was probably like legitimately weird, but it was also like I also wonder like what were the causes of like seeing this stuff. I sometimes hear about this like, oh, I saw, I think late '60s summer camp psychedelics. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that was the era of like, of experimentation with all sorts of stuff. It was right around Woodstock. So, I mean, and not that that still doesn't happen in some ways, but like that would have been my first thought. I was like, okay, teens on a dock. I mean, come on. In the late '60s, somebody's got something. They're smoking something or not. But like there was just a large, there was a large spate of like abductions, I guess you call it. I mean, the most famous one is over in Franconia Notch, New Hampshire, the Betty and Barney Hill story. That's like that's the great abduction story that's like everybody knows because it's creepy. It's the witnesses were credible. They're really a credible family, and the fact that was it Betty Hill lived until she was like 95 years old, I think. And growing up in New Hampshire, if you wanted to do a story, if you wanted to meet Betty Hill and have her discuss her abduction story, you could do that. Like I had friends growing up that were like, we want to do a book report on this book. And they're like, well, call her up. So we could. She lived like 20 minutes from where I grew up, and she'd invite you over. I mean, I didn't do this, but my friends were like, let's call it Betty Hill. And they're like, yeah, come on over. So they went to her house and she gave them like tea and like, crackers. She was in her 80s and it was like a firsthand interview. She had no problem talking about this stuff now because she felt that people believed her. But I know in the Colchester case, the Colchester incident that I reference, I think one of the people that witnessed it was very open to talking about it. The other person does not want to be associated with it. So, because I think for lack of people believing her, she doesn't want to be seen as like someone who witnessed something that didn't happen. So I think people react differently to all that stuff. Have I
ridicule?
Yeah. Have I witnessed UFO stuff? I've seen things that I could probably write off as probably some kind of government planes or something like that, especially in New Hampshire and New York, where it's a little bit more spread out. I saw something fly around the Pemigewasset Wilderness in New Hampshire that was dipping in between the mountains, and it looked like kind of like a plane, but it made no sound at all. So while I don't think it was an alien vessel, I'm thinking it was like an experimental aircraft from somewhere. I don't know which government, but it was like I remember seeing that going, that is weird. And no, there had been no ingesting of chemicals to witness that. I was camping alone with friends. Yeah, I mean, I would love to hear more about this theory that there's UFOs going into the lake. I mean, I would want to know who's witnessing that. I'll have to look into that. That's pretty wild.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I know who told me this, and I just got to reach out to him again. But I know if it's who I'm thinking of, he put a hold on doing like paranormal stuff for a while to focus on like his wife and his family and stuff like that. But like still, like I said, if it is him, he was telling me so much stuff of what he would do, collecting and stuff about UFOs that I think there's actually a newspaper article or some sort of article. I just don't know if he ever mentioned that. I don't know if he basically told me like in a private thing, like this is what he's heard or what. But I just always found that fascinating, nonetheless.
Well, one thing I've noticed especially about the lake, about UFOs and Champy, is that a lot of the sightings and reports kind of have disappeared. They used to be coming up a couple of years. I think it's the advent of the iPhone or whatever. Like it's made some reports of that stuff disappear. And I wonder if people thinking they're seeing things, they film something in water thinking it might be Champy, and then they go back and they watch the video and they're like, oh, it's just a dog or something like that. Like they can actually review their footage that they filmed so they don't tell everybody there's something weird. There is that one video from 2000, maybe right before the book came out. There was a video of something in Oak Ledge Park in Burlington, of something floating across the water.
Oh, yes.
Remember? And nobody could figure out what that was. And I actually, and it's funny we're bringing this up now because not this past weekend, but the previous weekend, I was in Oak Ledge Park with my son and I brought this up and we found the YouTube video right where the guy filmed it. We sat and watched it. And to this day, I'm like, I don't know what that is. It doesn't look like a dog. Somebody said it might be a young moose, but that is not common for Burlington.
I think somebody said something about a big stick or something, or like a big log or something too, right?
Yeah, but this thing looked like it was moving under its own power.
Right.
There was no wind too. If you watch the video, you just type in Burlington, Vermont, Lake Champlain, Champlain Monster. It's like one of the first videos that pops up. It's only less than a minute long, and it's from like 2009, so the quality's not great, but it definitely looks. I don't know what it is. It doesn't. It looks like an animal. It doesn't look like an animal that would be common to the area. You know, maybe it was like a young moose, but even then, it's like it didn't look like that because I've seen a lot of those too. So I don't know. That one to me, still, I watched it. I was like, oh, I'll be able to figure this out. And I'm watching it again at Oak Ridge Park on a rock, sitting. I don't know what that is going by. I still don't know what it is. So
Well, that's like crap. I forget what year it came out now. I want to say 2016, 17 maybe. A production crew by the name Small Town Monsters came to Lake Champlain to do a documentary on Champ, and they were interviewing Katie Elizabeth, who does like a Champ research thing, and she found some like echolocation stuff and was finding stuff underneath the water, which
weird.
so my theory to that is, well, I mean, had it moved? Like, is it moving? Is it staying
Yeah.
in place? Like because they're trying to say like because of the echolocation and stuff that they found underneath the water, they can basically say, hey, that is a big whatever this is down below is big. So it's like, well, that goes back to what I was just saying. Is well, could it be Champ or could it be the UFO base or something else?
Right.
So,
There's also there's a lot of shipwrecks down there too from like 1812 when boats were being sunk. So it's also it wasn't like one of the deepest lakes in New England. It's like 400
yes,
feet deep. So
yes.
I mean, yeah, again, not many people are going down to look for stuff down there because it's too deep. We don't really have the equipment and like the funding to go find something like that. Yeah, I think that would be sounds like somebody needs to write up a report for a grant and get some money to go send a submersible down there and go find the base or something or whatever's down there.
Yeah, and I think that I think the ship had I don't know if it would be that particular ship, but anyway, there has been stories about a ghost ship sailing along Lake Champlain. So
yeah, I've heard it before. The Lake Champlain Maritime Museum told a story about that one. So they're down near Basin Harbor in Virgins. That's a cool spot of the lake too, because right across there's that big cliff in New York that dips right into the lake, and that like the whole area of Virgins is like prime Champy territory for whatever reason. He doesn't get spotted up by Burlington or in the islands. It seems to be like his home base is the Basin Harbor Club, which is a lovely spot. So I can understand why he's there. But like, yeah, all that like Virgins area, Panton, all those state parks down there. That's if you want to go find your sea monster, I think you got to go to that area.
yeah, and now to go back to your book there, you found like a little trail somewhere around the Lake Champlain. It's not two areas, but I mean, I think the one that we're talking about is around the Button. Is it the Button Bay State
Button
Park?
Bay. Yep. Yeah, there's a nice. That's a great. I think Button Bay State Park is like the location of like two of the more famous like Lake Champlain monster sightings. And that's just a little point that sticks out. It's a nature trail. That's a one ghoster. That's an easy one to do. And Button Bay State Park's really cool. If anybody ever wants to like camp there for a weekend, I think they even you can't really swim in the lake there because it's all swampy. But they built a pool, an indoor pool, which I thought was kind of funny a long time ago. So there is that ability to go swim if you want. But there's some cool rock formations around the lake there. Great views of the Adirondacks. Easy hike to do. The other hike that's right along the lake that this is one of my favorite ones, and I don't even think a lot of people in the Burlington area know about it too much, is that at Nequet Bay State Park, which is like adjacent to where that abduction happened. There was like a Boy Scout or Girl Scout camp, and then the state park land. It's like right there, right next to each other. But there's a loop trail that goes around Nequet Bay State Park. You can actually peer down to see where that camp was, where that abduction happened. You can hike down along a lot of places where people like to go cliff jumping. Not that I endorse that, but you can definitely jump into the lake there. There's some cool swimming spots, and just great views of New York and Vermont. And that's probably that's a good midday 3-miler for a loop if anybody just wants to get out and see some new cool stuff. I'd recommend that one for sure.
Definitely. Now, before we wrap up the Lake Champlain, was there anything weird? I don't know. I guess weird, mysterious about it, or did you just find it like the fact of like you're basically by the Lake Champlain, which is known for Champ and
Yeah,
UFOs and stuff like that.
I like the idea of there being a Lake Champlain monster chapter, because the monster is just, there's so much. It's such a part of Vermont and New York's history of Lake Champlain that there is this monster. I mean, the baseball team is called the Lake Monsters, and you got Champion that comes roaring out on his four wheeler. It's just he's like an icon to the area. You gotta somehow incorporate him in the book. And then the UFO story I thought was so, I had never heard of that before. I don't remember where I found that info. I was reading something, and I just kind of went down the rabbit hole of like this abduction story, which I thought was really, really cool. And I went to go see where it happened. It's all private roads now, so it's not like I could like march onto the yard and out to the dock, but I could see close to where it happened. And then there was this state park right next to it, which I barely knew about. There wasn't even a sign from Route 2 telling you that it was there. So I explored the park there, and I was like, "This place is great." I got to bring other people to go back and check it out. So that's how I ended up writing up that hike. And I think that Niket Bay State Park, I think it became like Park of the Year a couple of years after the book came out. I'm not taking any credit for that. I think the Vermont State Parks goes around and just picks a park once a year to highlight. But they got highlighted for that, and I wonder if it was kind of tied in because I got to describe the trail system there. Usually people go beyond out to Sandbar State Park, which is like one of the most popular state parks in the state, and they pass this one by. So I figured I give some attention to a lesser known spot in a very popular area of the state.
I would say if it does involve your book coming out and that did have something to do with that, I mean, I would say hooray. I mean, you
Yeah,
made
yeah,
it get noticed.
yeah.
Maybe
Well,
that's what happened.
who knows? I mean, I did work with the state parks department to get some information about other state parks where it was, and they were actually fully on board. When I was writing this, they were very helpful. So I will give a shout out to the Vermont State Parks Department because they do a great job of running the parks that we have in the state. There's so many. I haven't been to all of them. There's a lot of them, obviously, but they're all like really nicely kept up. And I think living in Waterbury, we have two state parks. We have Little River and Waterbury Center State Park. Waterbury Center is just kind of like a beachy area, but Little River is. I don't know if you had a chance to go there,
I have
but
not, unfortunately.
it's got so much history there because that town, they used to be part of Waterbury, used to be like a part of the town that the state bought up to create the Waterbury Reservoir, and then they kind of bought up the rest of the town that went up the slopes of the mountain there, and they bought out all the farmers and left. And for the most part, these farmers didn't mind moving, but there were some that did not want to move, and there's some history stories there of people pretty much being forcibly removed from their land, which is kind of it's disturbing when you think about it. It's not the most pleasant subject, but there is an old house that still stands in the woods there, and when I first visited it, I could open the door and walk in. Now I think they've really bolted it, but I went into this old house in the middle. It's like a mile and a half, and it was like going into a house and somebody had written a manifesto on the walls, an anti-government manifesto, like all over the walls. It was the creepiest thing where somebody was just like, they stole our land. Some of it was in like big print, some of it was in very tiny writing. It was like something you saw of a movie of like somebody in a prison cell that wrote their book on the walls or something. It was like, I walked in, I was like, oh, this is weird. Like, just, yeah, like somebody of a not well mind has been writing on the walls of this house. And then like the next year I was like, you got to check this out. You got to read what this guy wrote. And we tried to get in, and it was like new bolts had been put on the doors. So whoever had been in there, like writing all this, like, the state took our land, all that stuff, could no longer get in there. So there's that history. Also, the people that lived there, they died there. They have a couple graveyards way up in the woods.
Oh, wow.
So speaking of, if you want to do an investigation, there's definitely some graves there. People that probably passed away early 1900s are probably the last residents there in the 1920s. One thing I've noticed about that graveyard is that there's this one family. They must have incredible genes because some of the people were living to 100 years old or beyond, and this for the 1800s is like unheard of. Like these guys they were living a long time, and then they'd be like these 100-year-old stones next to like a stone that just says infant, and you're like, oh, I mean, it's just like the compare and contrast of how hard it was to live in those woods at the time. But really cool area if you ever want to explore it. Great loop. You can see both of both of the graveyards, and plus lots and lots of like old home basement areas. There's like old wells you can check out. It's just a whole community up there that's just, I wouldn't call it a ghost town per se, but just like, the woods have reclaimed it, so you have to know where to look for sure. And if you're a mountain bike inclined, there's lots of mountain bike trails that take you up there, newly built, that'll take you up there as well. So I would recommend a visit to Little River. And actually, I think now that I say this, didn't one of those like websites, like only in your state websites, write up something about it recently? I just noticed. I think somebody sent it to me like a month ago. Like, come to Vermont's creepy ghost town, which isn't really a ghost town. It's all in one building.
Yes. Yeah, it was only in your state.
Yes, yeah. One of those places.
Yeah.
So, yeah, people know about it.
Oh, for sure they do. But yeah, that's funny. That's funny. That now reminds me of another story. So I back in 2012 or 13, because I forget exactly what year it was. But anyway, I got a tip that stop chewing on plastic, cat. And anyway, so I got this tip somewhere around 2012, 2013, where this place, I don't know if you're familiar with Chittenden at all. Yeah.
The town, yeah, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yes. Yep.
That, if you go up the road there, I forget what the street is right now. It's been actually a hot minute since I've been around there, but it brings you all the way up to Mountaintop Inn. And somewhere around there, it kind of like if you keep following the trail or the path where you can like drive, I guess, it brings you into like the woods a little bit where there's really not much like buildings or anything. But anyway, supposedly somewhere around here is where it used to be known as New Boston. So supposedly there's like old foundations there and stuff like that. So we set up a public event once, so that way I could maybe try to draw in anybody that might know the area about the old foundations and whatever. But the day before, me and that friend who I used to talk to, who I mentioned we all would go on like weird location hunting, basically. We actually found the 3 gravestones that are like in this weird like area, and I want to say to this day the name was something like Nathan Wheeler, his wife and kid or something like that. Weird though, but it was just like right there in this little spot. You could easily miss them, even though like the trail or the road is like right there. And I'll just never forget that. We never got any luck with anybody with the old foundations of possible New Boston, but yeah.
Oh, that's weird. So I wonder what the history of that town is. I'll have to look into it. I mean, in Waterbury's case, which they did a lot of times, is that, and I don't know if this might be the case of New Chittenden, is that government would buy out a part of a town to flood it for flood mitigation purposes. They made a reservoir. I'm thinking of like Quabbin Reservoir in Massachusetts, where they decided to flood like all these towns so they could have a drinking water source, or Boston. Same for New York. They did that in the Catskills. So there's all sorts of weird stories that come out of that, people that didn't want to leave. I mean, that actually affected my ancestors. My father's family, or part of the family, lived, which was now underwater, at Quabbin Reservoir in Massachusetts. So that whole family, and they weren't Simards, they were another part of the family, but they had a farm, and I forget the name of the town, but the town doesn't exist anymore because it's under like 500 feet of water or whatever. But like if you go down to like gate 13 on Quabbin Reservoir, there's different like gate hikes you can do. They say gate 13 on these roads will lead you to this part of this town. Gate 12 will lead you, that kind of thing. So I think it's like down gate 12 or one of those. If you walk down this old logging road where it used to be like an old town road, there's graveyards in the woods in Massachusetts there and stuff like that, remnants of a town, and then it just ends because the lake, the reservoir starts. And apparently, if I just keep walking underwater, you'll go to our old family homestead somewhere. And my father was able to dig up all these pictures, like showing us the land and like his grandfather as a boy standing outside, and these old photographs of this old barn that is no longer. You'd have to swim to get into it or something like that. So maybe there's some similarity to that New Boston there. Maybe the government bought it out for whatever reason, not for flooding it, but maybe they wanted it for other purposes.
Possibly, yeah. I mean, there was another one that he mentioned too. It was called New Philadelphia. Apparently, that's another one I'll have to check into.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if there's a New York.
Probably.
Yeah, you never know.
Yeah. So moving on, we're gonna go to the infamous bridge, and I think you already know what bridge I'm talking about. So.
Emily's Bridge, yeah. I know you've had experiences there, and I gave someone an experience. Let's put it that way. Put it in a way. I scared somebody there by accident, but I'll tell that story really quick. So I went. Well, I'd been there during the day. I have a friend that lives really close by, so I just drive by it all the time. But I went one night because I was like, I should experience this as it should be done in the dark, and I parked on the other side, not on the main Goldbrook Road, but like whatever. I think it's Cover Bridge Road in Stowe. I parked on the other side. There's actually parking for a couple cars. The town knows that people want to go there. So I pulled in. It wasn't even that late at night. It was just dark, October, I think, and cold night. You could see your breath. And I had my flashlight on me. I didn't have it on, and I hadn't been out of the car very long at all, and I could hear voices on the other side of the bridge. Now you've been there. It's not a very long bridge. It's actually pretty short. The brook it's over is not very big. It's just this old bridge. And the story with Emily's Bridge is there's the history, and you know it well. It's like there was Emily that was supposed to meet her fiance there. He never showed up, so she hung herself. That's the rumor. There was this other rumors of like some lady made up the story to keep kids away from like playing in the brook there. I mean, there's so many different stories of how that bridge got its name. Nobody really knows for sure the reason why it's that way, but people have had experiences where they've had like scratches or they've had like damage to their vehicles or they've been pushed. I've heard that. So I'm in the middle of the bridge. It's dark. It's pitch black. There's no moon, and I can hear voices, see little flashlight flashes. And I was like, "Oh, somebody's coming in the bridge." And I was like, "That's cool." So I won't. I'll try not to scare them. I won't say anything until they come into the bridge. And I could hear that they must have been local high school kids. I think they were coming on a dare, like to go into the bridge to kind of do what I was doing. But they were freaked out before they even walked in. And they come around the corner, and all I could see was the bright flashlight. And suddenly, the flashlight's on my face. And I was just like, "Hi," like that. And they screamed. They freaked out. They they thought they saw a ghost, and it was just me. Dropping things, swearing, screaming, running. It was like in a cartoon. You could hear the feet moving, but they weren't moving. They were, then they took off. It was similar to that in a way. And I was like, "No, I'm sorry." And eventually the car was right there, and I was like, "I'm not a ghost. I'm sorry I scared you." And we came to a quick understanding, and I was glad they didn't come and like try to attack me or whatever. But like we all had a good laugh. But whatever happened, if there was a ghost around that was trying to haunt me or them, I sent that away because it was a loud moment for sure. And my friend did ask, because this has happened on a new vehicle of his. He got a scratch on it. He didn't know how it happened, but he knew he had driven through the bridge recently, so he wondered if it was part of that that whole ghost setup. Yeah, and he's like, "Did you notice any scratches on your car?" And I was driving a beat up truck. I was like, "If there's new scratches on this, I'm not going to know. It's not going to jump out at me." So I was like, "It's possible," but I just didn't see anything that looked like new to me. But it's Emily's Bridge. It's famous. That one's also gotten a lot of national attention. It's in Stowe, which is super tourist town. A lot of people visit it, so they want to go see it. And it's close to Stowe Pinnacle, which you can actually see if you're at the bridge. You look up and you can see the Stowe Pinnacle, and that's one of the most popular and not too difficult hikes in northern Vermont. So, if anybody's looking for a trip to Stowe, I would say check the bridge out. Go for a hike up Stowe Pinnacle once the snow melts, and yeah, it's I love that spot. It's great.
Yeah. My team used to went during a July full moon night, And have you gotten a chance to watch that video?
Yes, I did. Yeah, it was really interesting.
Yeah, right. That whole night was weird. Like when we got there, it was just like, okay, whatever, we're here, like And then we take a couple pictures, noticed that there was something weird in these pictures, and we're just like, okay. Unfortunately, no EVPs were caught because of the damn water.
Yeah,
So,
yep.
so if there even was anything in it, we couldn't even hear it. One of the most weirdest, well, besides like one of the fact that I got scratched, but I think
Mm.
but anyway, so everybody should know July weather. And it's pretty nice. And what I mean by nice is like it's not too cold, it's not too hot, but like it's not cold enough so that you should see your breath. Me and two other people that night saw our breath.
Oh
And
wow.
and usually in the paranormal world that means that there's a presence uh manif- in the manifestation uh process, or if they haven't already manifested. So I think that kind of comes into play with the fact that I got scratched, because I noticed in a couple other pictures that I took personally, and besides the fact of me trying to prove that the legend was either real or fake, is that I was trying to call out to the spirits of whoever was around to, um, give me like a sign that you're here or whatever, or since you hate men, scratch me, because that's also the story. So anyway, I didn't see these until afterward, but inside these pictures on the bridge, it almost looked like there's a tall person that is basically on the like, I guess I would say he's like, if you're looking at the bridge, he would be not facing you, but he's like turned to his side a little bit. But however, his head is almost like he's peering over to the right side, like he's moving his head to the right. So, and I noticed that very well in the picture, but I did not see this thing when we were there. But he was big, I will tell you that. And I'm wondering if this guy, whatever the spirit was, this male, it looked like a male to me. It looked like he pretty deformed from the picture, and he looked like he's wearing some sort of hat. But anyway, the point is, I ended up getting scratched that night, and I got some pretty good marks.
Weird.
So,
Maybe it's not Emily that's haunting the bridge. It's something else. Maybe that's like maybe we've gone down the stories about Emily have just like taken over, and it's this really another story there that no one really knows.
honestly, I think Emily, if Emily is there, we'll just say for the fact that it is Emily, but I think she is there also with this male.
Mm.
And the reason why I say that is because, and I apologize for the stupid neighbor with the motorcycle who likes to think he's tough anyway, or whatever. But anyway,
I didn't hear
okay.
it.
Well, anyway, anyway, he, it's just so weird. Like, I don't know. So, if anybody's seen the old Joseph Citro book cover that Stephen Bissett made, it's like the ghost of Emily is on the right side of the bridge if you're facing it. Anyway, we captured a couple images where we see this weird ghostly figure, it looks like, on that same side of the bridge, almost like she's pointing back
Oh,
to the
weird.
way we came. And the reason why I say that is because we came the back way of the bridge. We didn't come through the main road, basically, which basically would you would have to turn like a left to get to the bridge. We came from the back road, so basically, as we're coming to the bridge, it's in front of us. So it's just very interesting to me that this ghostly female figure, and I'm saying female because it just looks like a woman wearing a really long gown or something. But anyway, but she's pointing basically back the way we came from.
Oh, weird. Like
Yeah,
leave. Huh.
yeah, like leave, like you don't want to be here, like
Hmm.
leave. And
Well,
yeah, it's just so weird.
It is strange, and there are times where I have to, if I'm going to my friend's house a certain way, I'll go over that bridge. And
Mm-hmm.
every time, and I always do this when I park at his house. I always get out and look and see if I've got any scratches. And I have a newer car now, so it would show up. But so far, so good. We haven't been scratched up. Yeah. So I have told my son this story, and he's like a little like weirded out by it. But who knows? Maybe we'll go some evening. It's only like 10 minutes from my house, so there's no excuse for me not to go freak him out during Halloween season this year.
Best time to do it.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah. But yeah, so what was that trail like though? Right by the bridge, right?
Oh
You
yeah,
said?
Stowe Pinnacle. So Stowe Pinnacle's it's a little, I don't know, I guess call it a knob, if you will, right off the main Worcester mountain range, which is kind of a separate steep mountain range from the Green Mountain chain. And you just there's a road. I think it's like Stowe Hollow Road, which is where the bridge is in Stowe Hollow. There's a parking area there, and it's like a 2 mile hike up to the pinnacle. It's really, really popular. There's two routes going up there, but on a busy weekend, they're parked all the way up and down this road. But it's not too difficult. There's a couple steep sections, but it takes you up on this rocky ridge, and where you have this great view overlooking Stowe Valley, Mount Mansfield, Camel's Hump, and if you have your binoculars, you can go down and you can actually see the bridge from the
Oh,
top
cool.
of the pinnacle. So there is a bit of a connection. So if you see anybody running out from there screaming, I don't know if you hear the noise, but you might see them run. But that's a Stowe Pinnacle is probably one of the more popular hikes in the state for sure. It's a great, and there's a reason for it because it's a beautiful view.
Yeah, and I don't know when this got added, and I don't know if you've been there recently at all, but now I'm trying to figure out how to figure out how to word this because I'm not good with the type of thing. But like like if you go to like what to say like an memorial area, and they have
Mm-hmm.
like the I'm just gonna say plaques that come out
Yep.
from the ground that basically tell you like this is like what went on here, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
They actually added one of those to Emily Bridge.
I did
So,
see that actually. Yeah. So I think the town has leaned into the legend a little bit. I think there was probably a time where probably the town of Stowe was like, "Oh God, Emily's Bridge, come on, guys," like. But now they're like, "Yeah, all right, let's embrace it. Let's. It's just another thing that people can go see."
well, they did ban people from going there at night as you wanted to get like a $25 fine,
Oh,
but
really?
yeah, because that's because like I think I asked you to ask your friend there because you said you had a friend that went by, but
Yep.
if he was part of the community that voted
Right.
to do that,
I,
so
I don't think he would have done that, but I wonder if it's still the case. I wonder if they still would fine you. I know Stowe police are pretty. They're definitely patrol the town, so they might. Um, so yeah, if you're gonna go at night, do it quick.
yeah, do it quick.
Just say you're
Otherwise,
trying to. Just say you're passing through and you had to park for a second. I don't know.
yeah, exactly. Just
Hmm.
say like you just forgot your wallet or something. Like if
Right.
you threw it out the window or something. I
Right.
don't know.
Right. Exactly. I'm lost. I don't know where I am.
Yeah. But anyway, that's always fun. For anybody listening that is curious about my story a little bit more and more detailed and stuff, and my breath that I supposedly saw and my scratches, you can check out a cool YouTube video from a UVM student that asked me to be a part of her project a couple years ago, and the YouTube video is called "The Story of Emily's Bridge," and the uploader is Ruby Bates. Otherwise, you can go to hauntedvermont.org and you can find the video on there and you can watch it from there.
Cool. Yeah, it's a good video. I saw it myself.
Yeah, I just thought it was just so strange. So, Tim, the last one that you and I kind of agreed on was the amazing Brunswick Spring, which is the eighth wonder of the world.
Right.
We got the Abenaki curse, and supposedly the water that can heal, and it can be split into like six different type of minerals.
Yeah, the Brunswick Springs. So, for anybody that wants to go find this is a journey. Nobody really lives near it. It's a long ride for you in Rutland. That's probably like a 3.5 hour drive. I mean, even though
Oh
it's not
yeah.
like far mileage wise, it's all back roads. It's just a long, windy road. Um, so yeah, Brunswick Springs. So Brunswick, Vermont, is a town of maybe 100 people. I mean, maybe I'm being generous there, but it's extremely small. It's right on the Connecticut River across the border from New Hampshire. It's up in the Northeast Kingdom, but it's not just. I mean, Northeast Kingdom. You're thinking like Lyndonville, Burke, and stuff like that. It's beyond that. It's way up there. It's closer to the Canadian border. It's probably just a few towns removed from that. It's very isolated. I wouldn't be surprised if there's no cell reception there. I haven't been back there in a few years, so I can't confirm. But um, it's an actual spot that you have to hike to, which is kind of cool for the book. Definitely, it's not like there's the location and the hike nearby. This is actually all intertwined, and it's on, I believe it's on Brunswick town land and like nature conservancy land. It's a protected area. So, and most people park at the Brunswick town offices. And when I say town offices, it's like a room in a building, but there's a little parking area there for municipal parking, and you can just walk down this old road. It takes you out to this pond, and it's basically just an old like logging road, pretty easy. A one ghost hike. It's very anybody can do this one, and it's not very long, and it takes you around this really pretty pond area, and it takes you out to the springs. And you're thinking spring. I don't know. When I think of the springs, I don't think of the location that it's at. It's actually down a very steep gully, right above the Connecticut River on a very steep bank. So like once you get to the spring, if you wanted to keep exploring downwards, you got to watch your step, or you're going to fall into the Connecticut River, and it's going to be a fall you don't want to have. But around this location, somebody discovered, I think the springs had been well known, but somebody discovered the idea of marketing the springs as a vacation resort, I believe. I think the legend has it that there were eight separate wells where the springs were coming up from, each having a different mineral, each having a different healing quality. And the whole legend of the curse was that like the springs are for everybody. Anybody can take the water for their own purposes. This is like a public good, if you will. If you try to make money off it, if you try to build on it and like try to take the water for yourself, that's when bad things will happen. That's basically the gist of the curse. So some enterprising guy thought, well, yeah, it's just a story, and he basically separated out the spring. So when you go there today, you can tell there's like a little like concrete block or something set up where there's like 6 different valves of the water's coming out, and it's coming down this waterfall that goes into the river there. But it's there. You can go there. People bottle that, take it in bottles, and they go, and they know in their minds they know exactly which mineral is which spring. I don't know those. I'd have to go with an expert, but people do go there to fill up, water for healing purposes. They still do. But some guy decided, you know what? I'm going to take this spring. I'm going to pipe it into this brand new building. I'm going to build a spa. This was like in the early 1900s, and I don't know if you know the history of like northern New England, but there was a lot of gigantic old hotels that were built in Maine, New Hampshire, and Vermont in like that, like late 1800s, like 1850s to like 1910 or something like that. Lots of tourists were getting out of the cities because those were gross in the summer. They couldn't stand New York or Boston in the heat. And they would come north to New Hampshire and Vermont and Maine and go relax, I guess. So, you got the picture up. So, there's the guide. There are 6 of them. All right. So there, if you need a bromide spring, you got to go second from the left, it looks like. Cool picture. So anyway, yeah. So somebody built this gigantic hotel. I think they maybe had a handful of guests before the thing burned to the ground. Mysteriously, who knows? Nobody knows how. But a lot of hotels were mysteriously burning to the ground back then. There's only like 3 giant grand hotels in New Hampshire that still have survived that era, and I'm sure they've got sprinkler systems that would, be big firefighters envious. But they built a second hotel in the Brunswick location, and it was supposed to be bigger and better and more awesome than the last one. And that one didn't last more than a few months before that burned down, I think. So this guy just went through all his money and lost it all trying to build this like resort where he was going to heal people, get people, people would convalesce from tuberculosis or whatever ailment they had. And it just never worked out for him because everything kept burning. But the foundations of these giant buildings of this hotel are there. Like you can walk upstairs and then there's be this like concrete slab that you can tell is a huge spot, huge building that's just not there. But you can wander around the foundations of it. And there's different parts of the building that are there. And you can see where it would have been quite a spot, because you can imagine that you would have had this large hotel. There wouldn't have been trees over the river. You would have had a great view overlooking northern New Hampshire over the river. Would have been like a really prime location to relax at. You would have had these great springs, but it wasn't meant to be. And I think others have tried to tap into that. There's been other people that have tried to make money and bottled that, and it hasn't. Something's happened. It hasn't worked out in their lives for whatever reason. So now today, it's nature conservancy land. I think in conjunction with the town, and it's like public good. If you want to go there and take the water for yourself for your own purposes, that you're not selling anything, then you can. And it's a cool spot. People leave little gifts too for the Native American spirits. A lot of like tobacco gifts and other things are left behind, money, coins. So people still do that as well. And that's, again, an easy hike. If you're up, for whatever reason, if you're up in that corner of the state or New Hampshire or Vermont, I definitely go check it out. There's no signage to it. They don't like advertise where it is. You just kind of have to know where to go. But yeah, I'd love to go back. It's such a cool spot.
Well, I wish I had been there, but I have not, and I tried looking it up on like Earth Google, and even I'm like, where do you even go on the like Earth Google? Like you're saying, like you got to know where you got to go for sure.
Yeah, yeah. There's no. I think I don't even know the name of the pond. I think there's a name of the pond, but I think you just kind of have to. So that's why I say park at the town. There's a sign that says Brunswick Town Office. You pretty much found it. It's across the road.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and maybe one day I'll be able to take my family to check it out, and I can check that off the list as well. So
Yeah.
yeah, and this is off topic for a minute, but you just had to say like weaving gift like tobacco and stuff. So I got a like really interesting story, but this is for like another place, but it still kind of fits into this whole like tobacco thing that you mentioned. So we investigated in 2015 the Hubbardton battlefield, and we did this after they did the reenactment, and we went back again during a full moon, and so basically, I did what they call like a spirit box session. Which, for those listeners who don't know what a spirit box session is, basically think of like an EVP session, but instead of going back to having to hear if you caught anything, you're gonna hear the response in real time. So you can like basically, like me and Tim are doing right now, have like a real conversation. So anyway, at one point we stopped and I put my cigarette down because I was smoking at the time, and I took one out and wet one up and stuff like that. And then I was like, if there's anybody around us, please feel free to have a cigarette with me. And one of the voices that came back through the spirit box was, "You got chew?"
Yikes!
Yeah,
Did you light up the second one for him, or?
I wish. But unfortunately, we didn't have chew, so we're just like, well, unfortunately, I don't have chew, but and then I even asked, I was like, does anybody even here have chew? And then everybody's like, no. So I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, but it was so cool. It was so cool that happened. But yeah, that was a small little story. Well, I don't have anything else with Brunswick Spring because I haven't gone, so I can't really explain anything else. But from what
Yep.
you said, makes me want to go anyway. So last week, Tim, you wanted to talk about three things that you felt like don't really get mentioned that month, and the first mentioned that much. There we go. It was Groton. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Oh, Groton. I know. Yeah.
Groton.
I think everybody. I think it might be. Yeah, I think they pronounce it Groton other places, but Vermont pronounces it sillier ways. Groton State Forest. Another one that's not that I was going to say you can combine your Brunswick trip there, but that's still actually not that close. Groton is it's just east of Montpelier Barre area. It's a big state forest with lots of like cool hiking trails there, but there's with just a great cool place to visit and campgrounds and all that stuff. But there's some cool stories there as well about somebody hiding counterfeit money. There's a real true story about a guy who was running a counterfeit money operation, got busted on it, and he actually during his trial tried to murder the state's attorney during his trial. This is all true story, and And unfortunately, that meant he had to go to jail longer. Very stupid on his part. How he snuck in a knife into the courtroom to stab the guy in the neck. Who knows? This was 1870, so security wasn't a thing then.
No, not really.
But apparently, the legend has it that he hid not necessarily counterfeit money, but real cash from the counterfeit operation he was running around this place called Kettle Pond, and people have seen the spirit there looking through the rocks. And there's a lot of big boulders and rocks in this pond there. And allegedly, it's this guy. He did end up leaving jail because the sentencing back then wasn't too bad. But the guy he stabbed, the state's attorney, went and personally escorted him out of the Windsor jail and then said never come back to Vermont, and pretty much kicked him out of the state permanently. I don't know where they went, but his sentencing was done. The guy he tried to kill made sure he left.
Oh man.
So,
well, to touch on that one a minute, too, since you mentioned there wasn't really much security, so I'm going to say this: when we're going to go back to Glastonbury Mountain for a minute. So when Paula Weldon disappeared on December 1st, 1946, that whole search right there for this missing college student is actually what formed the Vermont State Police.
Oh, really? That was the catalyst.
Yep, that was the catalyst.
I didn't know that. Cool.
Yeah, and another fun fact for those that like to read or maybe listen to audiobooks is if you know the author, which she did live in Vermont for a while before she passed away, is Shirley Jackson, the author of The Haunting of Hill House and stuff like that. She wrote a book that was actually based on the disappearance of Paula Weldon, which is called Hangman. So anyway, to answer your question now, Tim, real quick, the last one that you wanted to talk about was Island Pond.
Oh, Island Pond. That one, now, if you want to go to Brunswick, Paul, you can combine Island Pond because they're literally just down the road from each other.
Oh, yeah.
Island Pond it's a confluence of three major railroads that were coming out of Canada, Portland, from Canada to Portland, Maine. It used to be just a big railroad town. So there was just a lot of interesting people that would come through Island Pond back in the day. Now it's much smaller, and it's in the winter, it's a big snowmobile town. But there's a great hike up Bluff Mountain, which I highly recommend, right on the edge of town. If you park in town, you can actually walk to the trailhead and then go up the mountain. It's pretty convenient to the location of the village. But it's just a really cool spot, a great state park to visit. There are definitely stories about ghostly apparitions on the lake there that they've seen. There's a story about a tree that would bleed or something like that. That was one of the legends I saw or something like that, where maybe there had been a body that had been stuffed in there. I know this is now getting really, really gory territory here, but that might have been the rumor. Somebody got stuffed in a tree or somebody fell into it and couldn't get out. I feel like that's a story of people getting stuck in trees and rotting and dying, and it's not uncommon. That's something that does come up occasionally. So there's one of those legends there, but it's also just a part of the state that's not visited as much because of its remoteness. I think it's just not close to much, But if you ever want to, spend an interesting outdoorsy weekend, maybe rent a cabin and go explore. There's a huge national wildlife refuge up there that's worth checking out as well.
Well, I guess the only thing I'm going to say to touch on this bleeding tree aspect is, Native Americans did believe that everything had a spirit. So they even believed the trees had spirit. So I don't know, could the tree have been the spirit bleeding?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, you could say if it was a maple tree, it was maple syrup or sap or whatever, but it's, this is a little bit more disgusting. That's that whole story. But
yeah. Well, all right, Tim. Well, I guess I had a question about your thoughts on the paranormal, but you kind of went into that a little bit. So I guess the final thing to really brush on is, and as we mentioned too, is your book is unfortunately out of print. So will there kind of maybe possibly be a updated version?
Yeah, I'd like to do it. I've been saying this for years. Oh, I should update it. It's just going to have to take me finding my former publisher and just be like, how does this work? I'd love to run another copy because the Publishing Works business that published this went out of business not too long after, and I think there was also trouble in the publishing industry at the time. Borders Books did not pay a lot of small publishers once they got books in their bookstore because they went out of business. So I think there was a ripple effect that affected this organization as well. It's just, the nature of the industry, I guess. But I should find out if I can get the original files and then update them, because some of the trails have changed a little bit, especially in light of Hierarchy and Irene. This was written before then, before a lot of changes to the landscape. So I'd like to, once I get those files and then maybe find an independent publisher, which there are many in the state. There could be a reprinting of the Haunted Hikes and maybe another 3-week book tour. We'll see. It's something I should definitely look into. There's other booksellers that randomly approach me occasionally. They find my contact info and they ask about it if I have any copies left, and I haven't. I've sold them all out. When Publishing Works went out of business, I took back all the copies and I actually sold them out of my house to other bookstores that knew about it. But they're all gone now. So if I ever do have a printing, I know at least 3 places that are top of the list that would want copies.
All right. Well, I appreciate your time, Tim, and everything else, because as I'm just going to put it on the record. It was a fun time trying to hunt you down, per se, and I don't really know if you have a place for anybody to really keep in touch with you or anything. So, I
don't have I'm on Twitter. If anybody wants to send me a direct message, that's probably the most public way. I don't even know my handle off the top of my head. I can tell you in a second, though. I think it's like T Simard VT. I think it's that original is my Twitter handle. It's not at T Simard VT. You can just send me a note if you want. That's my Twitter handle. Pretty easy to find. I think my Instagram's private, but my Twitter's public, so you can see what I don't tweet much, but you can see what I do tweet.
You said T Simard VT?
VT. Yep. VT
okay,
is Vermont.
I think I found you. That's so funny. I never found you on Twitter, so I had to find you on Instagram.
I'm there too, as well.
Yeah, and once again, Tim, I appreciate your time, and I really pray that you can get this updated and back out again, because it's a fun read, and I bet people that love to hike would love to check out some of these cool locations around Vermont.
Right, I think I just need to stop being lazy about it and just figure out how to get this back. It can't be that hard. I just got to do it.
For sure, Tim. Well, I appreciate your time, and you're welcome to come back on to talk with me if you have anything that you want to talk about. Otherwise, to shoot me a message either way. But for all those listening, thank you so much for listening to this 2-hour long discussion. Which it was a lot of fun. I learned a lot, and hopefully you did too. And hopefully we'll have Tim on again when the second edition comes on, and we can help promote the shit out of that.
Sounds good to me.
All right, Tim. Well, for everybody else listening, my name was Paul Doski, and this was Tim Simard. And whatever you do, make sure you keep your eyes open, because you just never know if an apparition will appear in front of you. Good night.